How's it going, guys? So welcome back to part 3 where we're going to be making this wee project really come to life now. So in this part I'll just go ahead and I'll run the project. We're going to go ahead and assign different character types to the wee characters that we spawned on the map, and we'll give them all unique abilities that they can all use and let them use those abilities on each other, just like you can see here. Okay, look at these two data types here. So we're going to be using scriptable objects to set up data for agents and for abilities. So for your agent here, you've got all the data that your agent will use. So we've got name, HP, if it's a player agent, the sprite you want it to be in the map, and then the abilities that you want that to use. And for the ability, we've just got a name, and then we've got a virtual function here that we can then override. I'll show you more of that in a second. So if you know your way around a scriptable object, you'll kind of know the process, but it basically will allow us to create loads of different objects within the Unity environment and assign loads of values to them that we can then use on runtime. So for abilities here, what I'm actually doing is I've created another class called attack ability. Now this could be anything. This could be a buff ability or an AoE ability. I'll talk more about that in a second, but that's derived from the ability data that I just showed you. Now I'm not doing anything with these properties here, but it just shows that we can then have values assigned to this particular ability type that makes that type unique. I'm overriding the method onActivated that I've got in the ability data. This just means that I can provide, a certain set of rules or behaviour that will only apply to that type of ability. Going back into Unity, I've got a bunch of attack types set up here. If I right click and I go to create attack ability, I can just set a new one up. Okay, so there's a few other interesting things to show you. I've added this enum player input state, and it's got two types. It just helps to identify what phase of the turn the player is currently at, and I'll show you more of how those are important in a minute. We've got a new class here called agent entity. The way I like to set things up is an entity basically represents entity within the actual instance of the game. So this agent entity will actually be added to the agent game object as a component. So we've just got a few behaviours here. A mouse click on the agent object, the mouse hovering, and then the mouse exiting the hover state. So we'll come into each of these methods. This is where things might get a wee bit more complex, so feel free to just pause the video and copy it down into here. And then the input controller will be our point of accessing that user input. We then come into the user input, select target, and this is, you'll see here the enums that we set up earlier. We're checking if we're in the right state to select a target. So if we're not in the select target state, which of course means we're in selectability, we'll tell the user just however. If not, and we keep going down here, we set the selected target of user input to the one that we clicked. For now, we progress the turn. Now the agent entity, and we'll go to the hover one. So on hover, you'll see here, again, if we're not in that select target state, if we are ready to select a target, and what I'm doing here is I'm saying, have we got a hover pointer, which I've set up here as a game object, and if we don't, then instantiate it. Once we've got that, we'll set active to true, and we'll just position it roughly on the game object that we're hovering over. Come back to agent entity, and when we exit the hover, you'll probably guess what we're doing. We're just setting that hover pointer, if we have one, to the set active equal to false, just to hide it. And one last time, here is the input controller, if you want to pause the video and jot down what we've got. One thing that we did skip over, however, is the selectability method here. So we'll go into the references and we'll find where we're calling it. So you see here the UI controller has definitely had some work done to it. So again, here's the entirety of the UI controller now. So you can pause the video and you can copy this down. So there's been some changes in the Unity hierarchy here, so we'll have some new elements in the canvas. So we've got an abilities parent and we've got a template ability button. So what you'll see here back in the Unity interface is we've got this abilities parent. I've just added a wee vertical layout group to it to sort them vertically, and we'll always have this button here, this template ability button. I just like having it there visually for me to make some quick changes if need be. So ability template button will always be here. We don't delete that when we recreate the interface at the start of each turn, but what I will do before I run the game is I'll set the scale just on the X to 0, just so that I don't see that template when I run the game. So we've got some new bits and bobs here. The most notable thing is these three methods. We've got a setup ability parent, we take an agent, and this is just going to let us clear out the abilities that are displayed in buttons and recreate new ones for that selected agent, of course referencing the abilities that are assigned to them. So we do a clear abilities parent first, so we're going through all the children objects inside of that abilities parent, and if it's not equal to the template we get rid of it, because of course when we come here, create abilities button for that agent, we want to use that template and create a new game object for it. So that's what we're doing. We're getting reference of the button and of the text. We're setting the parent to the abilities parent so that of course we can remove it again later when we're done with it. And then here we're just adding an on-click listener to that button, which will just allow us to select that ability. We'll just set the text to the name of the ability. So this is going to be hidden to begin with, so what I like to do is just set the local scale to vector 3.1. So quite similar to the flow you seen earlier. When we select the ability, we're just calling the select ability in the user input again, and we're passing the ability data. If we come in here, you'll see all we're doing is we're setting the selected ability, which is declared at the top, and we're moving the input state onto select target. This means that we can now click on an agent on the map, and now that we're on the select target state we can use that ability on them. And in the spawn characters method, back in the battle controller from the last couple of parts, you see a couple of changes as well. So when we spawn the characters, now we're going to be going to the Prefab Manager, and we're going to be getting this agent object prefab, which I'll show you in a minute. Again, we're getting the renderer. We're assigning the agent entity class as a component. So once we've added that agent entity onto the object, we've got a couple more things to do. We just assign the agent associated with the entity to be the agent that we're currently looping through, and then we also get the sprite assigned to the agent and pass it into the sprite renderer. And I nearly forgot this bit. Instead of passing in a bunch of values here into the constructor, if we go into the constructor, what I'm doing now, you'll see, is I'm passing the agent data, which is actually the scriptable object. So you can just pass in that data and then assign all the values here. One last thing here is the Prefab Manager. Just setting up a singleton here, and then I've got two values. And what I like to do is, this is the only place in my Unity project that I'll actually assign the drag and drop an agent object prefab, which is my agent object here. You see I've got a box collider added to that now, which I'll need because I'm using the on mouse over, mouse down and the on mouse exit. So you'll need a collider to be able to use those methods. Those come from mono behavior. And then we've got one more, which is the hover pointer. So I just created this wee circle graphic in about 2 minutes in Photoshop. I just added a wee animator to it as well, make it flashy. So we'll run it now, just to see it all again. So you've got the character here, Rogue, the scriptable object for the player Rogue. You see here I've assigned the sprite and I've assigned the abilities. I can click double click and then I can hover over these other characters. I can click and then you see here use double click on target goblin, which is pretty cool. And then I've got some test agents here, so you can just drag these test agents in as you see fit. So I hope that was helpful. That was a wee bit meatier than I thought it would be, but there's quite a lot of changes, but it's starting to look a wee bit better now. You can actually do things instead of pressing the space bar and printing out crap into the console. Thanks for watching, and on to part 4. Cheers! Damn, no man, fuck me.